This is the first 3 chapters of the 4th experiment by me, Jordan Siddle. Chapter 1. The Tanners. We did it. We came together as a whole and bridged the gender gap. Or did we? Kit stepped out onto the slick pavement. A metal door slid shut behind her. The rain pounded down, but her leather boots repelled every drop. She brushed a stray strand of platinum hair out of her face and pulled her hood up, shielding herself from the cold downpour. A flash of vibrant orange fading to black tips peeked out from underneath her hood as she made her way down the busy street. The pungent scent of sewage coming up from the Sump district mingled with the aroma of fresh rain-filled air, creating a jarring contrast. Metallic cars and single-wheel stingers, motorcycles designed to slice through the city's electromagnetic grid, whizzed down the roadway beside her, their sleek bodies gliding over the currents. The only visible evidence of the grid was faint neon lines that appeared and disappeared in the blink of an eye as the vehicles passed by. The streets bustled with people weaving through a maze of towering buildings and makeshift stands crowded along the sidewalks. Overhead, the Caterpillar tram crawled along its creaking tracks, while the bullet train sliced past on a separate route, its piercing squeals echoing as it raced and wove between the structures. Silhouettes scurried by Kit, huddled under their umbrellas and hoods to shield them from the relentless downpour. They hustled past her without a second glance, seeing her only as an obstacle in their path as they rushed to their destination that morning. Her destination, however, consisted of a newspaper stand that stood tucked into a small alcove, almost hidden amongst the looming buildings that cast shadows over the city streets. In this city of concrete and metal, artificial lighting was a constant necessity, even during daylight hours when the sun struggled to penetrate through the vast expanse of dense skyscrapers. As she made her way towards the newspaper stand, Kit couldn't help but feel a twinge of envy for those who lived above in the Aether district, basking in natural light while others below relied on artificial sources to distinguish the difference between night and day. In Aether, where wealth and status reign supreme, there is no need for such man-made lighting. The sunlight poured onto their streets, illuminating the grandiose buildings and opulent homes of the elite. It was a stark contrast to the Terra district, where dim streets and cramped living spaces were the norm. Life in Sump, however, was a brutal grind. The poor crammed into dilapidated shacks wedged into sewer tunnels where the air reeked of filth and decay, thick enough to make breathing a chore. Darkness clung to every corner, and the walls dripped with grime that never seemed to dry. Crime thrived below, where gangs, hustlers, and desperate souls fought to survive. Even the probes rarely ventured past the checkpoints, content to let the chaos fester as long as it remained contained. Kit was at least grateful for her father's high standing at Quantum Dynamics Solution, or QDS. Although she didn't fully understand what her father's role was in the company, she knew it involved maintaining the city's energy supply, keeping her family comfortable in the middle district of Terra. Kit finally approached the stand, noticing that no line had been formed yet. A hot sugared sweet potato, a pack of cold orange slices, and today's link. Yes, of course. I can get you a hot sugar sweet potato, a pack of cold orange slices, and today's link. Is there anything else I can get for you? No. Perfect. That will be 4 orbs, please. Kit sifted through her jacket pocket to pick out 4 blue orbs, but could only find 3. She pulled out 1 red orb. Do you have change for 5 orbs? Certainly. Please place your orbs in the tube and I will hastily retrieve change for you. Trying to hide her annoyance with the vendor's cheerful demeanor, Kit placed the blue orbs back into her coat, sliding the small spherical red orb into the tube. She waited as it navigated its way through the tube and into the vendor's register. The register beeped and opened, followed by the vendor retrieving a blue orb and handing it to Kit. Taking the single orb, Kit placed a strip of metal on the counter and watched as the vendor plugged a cable into the end of it. Their machine chirped to signal that the update was ready. They pressed a key on the machine to initiate the update, and only seconds later came another chirp that it had been completed. The vendor had barely removed the cable from the device when Kit snatched up her belongings and the link from the counter. As she did so, her hand brushed against a soft fabric patch that sat in the front-facing bin under the stand's counter. She snatched it with her other hand and stuffed it up her sleeve as she turned away. "Have a fabulous day!" the metallic vendor behind the counter yelled after her. "Plix, you sibs," Kit muttered to herself, going back home. As Kit moved back through the busy streets of Terra, her gaze caught on plaster propaganda posters on some of the walls. The newest protector stared back at her, his jaw set with determination, his copper hair styled, and his large green eyes seeming to follow her as she passed. Bold lettering stretched across the top. Newly appointed Protector Alaric Mendax. Under the slogan, the smaller text read, Together, we secure a safer tomorrow. Kit couldn't help but scoff at the words, though she kept her head down and moved past without lingering too long. What was this protector going to do any differently than any other protector that has been appointed before? She leaned toward the cold metal scanner by her building entrance, angling the port behind her ear toward the screen. Kit was appreciative that these newer models were strong enough that she didn't have to bother pulling her hood down. A low beep echoed through the empty corridor as the door unlatched and slid open. She looked at the elevator, considering for a moment to take it, but then thought better not to. What if someone hops in and expects me to say something? Kit couldn't think of anything more mind-numbing than talking just to fill the silence. Taking a deep breath, she began her ascent up the 17 levels of stairs, her footsteps echoing against the walls. After reaching her floor, she made her way down a long hallway, lined with drab gray walls, finally reaching her family's pod. As she entered, the sound of her father's soft snoring from her parents' bedroom filled the air. It was a comfortable and familiar lullaby that had played every morning of her life. She closed the pod door behind her, leaving behind the noisy cityscape for the comfortable familiarity of home. The pod, though compact, still provided enough room for Kit and her family to be comfortable. Each member had their own designated space, Kit and Dolius with their own separate rooms, while their parents shared one. The walls were lined with shelves and compartments, maximizing every inch of available storage the pod had to offer. The soft glow of the overhead lights made the space feel warm and inviting, despite its small size. Donald, Kit's father, was value-driven and taught both his son and daughter to be honest, responsible, and resourceful like his father had with him. Growing up in Terra, joining the Quantum Vipers was a common rite of passage, and provided a regular income at an incredible risk to the youth. Donald always strived to seek alternative outlets for his children to guide them in the right direction. That might be why he has always struggled in his relationship with Kit, who seemed to have no direction of her own. His wife Priya was a homemaker and housewife. Her slim figure and nurturing habits kept the household running while Donald provided for them. Priya had become a useful mediator in disputes between Donald and the children when necessary, and Donald has always been grateful for her graceful methods when bringing peace and understanding to any situation. She was perfect. At the moment, she was in the kitchen cooking breakfast. Eggs, bacon, and pancakes were being shuffled on the stovetop under Priya's careful supervision. Kit had always wondered where the animal products came from and how many preservatives had been pumped into the products to keep them fresh. She had read about farms in school, and there was nothing that looked even remotely like a farm within the tall concrete walls that surrounded Zonsi. "Oh, hello, Catherine." Priya was surprised to hear the front door close. Kit rolled her eyes. She hated being called Catherine, but no matter how many times she asked her mother to call her Kit, she refused. "I didn't know you were awake. Oh no." She noticed the street food clutched in Kit's hand. "But I was making breakfast." "It's okay, Mom. I was craving something different this morning. Wanted to pick up today's link too." Priya made a face of disapproval. Eating sweet potatoes covered in all that sugar isn't exactly healthy, especially for a young girl like you, and definitely not at this time of day. And I was going to cut your pancakes into little snowflakes this time. Kate glanced at the glowing data pad on the wall beside the fridge. The bars on the left were filled up to the 7th hour block, while the bars on the right were half full to the 15-minute block. "Okay, Mom, I will have double the vegetables for lunch." Kit turned on her boot heel before she could listen to her mother's response, which she had assumed based on previous conversations of this nature, included a long-winded explanation of the percentage of young people falling ill today and how healthier eating habits would solve all their problems. Back in her cozy, cluttered room, Kit peeled off her wet boots and heavy, soaked jacket, tossing them onto the floor. With a contented sigh, she sat on her plush bed, the soft blankets enveloping her as she dug into the steaming sweet potato, its buttery juices running down her fingers. Pulling out the link, she pressed the blue button on the metallic spine, and a holographic screen slid outwards, revealing the latest issue. The date in the top right read, January 31st, 2223. 12 die in explosion in Sump after an illegal chemical lab was uncovered. Family disappears with only a single child left behind. New code being discussed by the board to implement the Citizen Vigilance Network. Woman dies in an untimely death at 19 after refusing VitaSync. Kit didn't know why she bothered picking up the link every day. It wasn't like the headlines weren't always the same. Still, she always hoped that something exciting would happen to break up her mundane day-to-day routine. Something exciting would be outside the realm of death and disappearances. She could now hear her father's muffled tone and heavy footfalls around the pod as he got ready for work. Kit decided to get a head start on her school lessons for the day. She was sure that Dolius wasn't up yet. She stood from her bed, picked up the mail sitting on the desk, and tore open the envelope addressed from the Jade Institute. Inside was a small education chip for the 12th year students and Dolius' secondary level EC. She slid her EC into the port behind her ear and lay back on her bed. As she gazed out the window, she didn't notice the vast landscape of concrete and rain smacking against the window. Only now being able to see the holographic man standing in front of a holographic board, writing down numbers and equations for her first course of the day. Algebra. Halfway into history, Dolius burst into her room, startling Kit. What the plix? Where's my EC? Dolius, knock! Yeah, next time. Dolius walked over to her desk, grabbed his EC out of the same envelope Kit got hers from, checked to make sure it was his name on the chip, and walked out. Kit sighed, the familiar pang of resentment creeping in. Dolius used to knock, used to care, but those days felt as distant as the carefree laughter they once shared. Their relationship had changed after Dolius' 18th birthday last October, and Kit had always been too uncomfortable to find out the reason for it. He used to be her best friend, but she'd been lonelier than ever these last few months. She started the EC again. Zonsi stands as humanity's final stronghold after the devastating global concord, a conflict that saw the world unite against former America, determined to dismantle its unchecked dominance. Visionary leader Edifix Arc emerged from the war, ready to forge a brighter future, rebuilding Zonsi as a beacon of hope. With his groundbreaking advancements in robotics and the construction of an impenetrable concrete wall, he ensured the city's survival and security in a fractured world. Kit let the voice carry her away in thought. At the end of her lessons, Kit removed the EC and slotted it into the next available space in her chip deck. The deck, connected to the pod modem, feeds into Exemplar Labs' vast databases. Every lesson was logged and assessed for completion, ensuring every school-attending citizen met their educational requirements. Though the envelope bore the name Jade Institute, her education was still controlled by Exemplar Labs. As the true power behind Zonsi, Exemplar Labs owned and operated every aspect of life in the city. What they didn't oversee, their cyborg enforcers and vendors managed with precision. Jade Institute, the sole provider of primary through post-secondary education, was another extension of Exemplar's far-reaching influence, making it the only school anyone in the city could attend. Kit became efficient in her practice of remembering to insert her EC into the chip deck each day after testing the boundaries in her former years. She remembered the visit from Exemplar Labs and the angry conversation that followed with her father, that included threats and choice words if she didn't shape up. It's not that the conversation scared her, but that she would rather not deal with her father's rage again. Her mother came up to her room to tell her that dinner was ready and asked her to let Dolius know as well. Kit went to the room next to hers. After knocking on his door with no response, she decided to open it. Dolius. No response. The first thing that caught her eye was the rows of cardboard boxes stacked against the walls, threatening to tumble over at any moment. As she ventured further into the room, careful not to trip over any stray objects on the floor, as it was covered in a chaotic array of mechanical parts and tablets filled with catalogs of machinery, instructions, and builds. The open boxes seemed to have exploded their contents all over the room, making it difficult for Kit to navigate without fear of stepping on something that Dolius may have deemed important. In the corner of his room stood the imposing figure of a dismembered cyborg, its sleek metal frame supported by a sturdy stand. It was silver, but its left arm bore a red angular insignia like a skewed triangle slashed through by a thick horizontal line. The various parts of the SIB had been assembled with a careful touch, its skin glinting in the low light, each limb connected to a battery resting on the floor. Dolius was hunched over his desk, deep in concentration as he soldered wires together, from a complex motherboard to the intricate web of tendons and cables that made up the robot's arm lying before him. The low vibration of machinery and faint sparks filled the room, making it seem almost alive. Despite his intense focus on his work, Dolius also managed to multitask, studying and absorbing information from his lessons between each precise movement. "How can you do that?" Kit asked. "Do what?" he responded, still concentrating on what he was doing. "Focus on your school lessons and robotics at the same time." "Because I'm better than you?" "Okay, Glurk, dinner's ready." "I put it on audio only and listen to them twice while I work. I don't know." "Interesting. I didn't know you were doing that." "Why would you?" "I don't know. Sharing stuff from time to time isn't a bad thing. We could talk more, D." "I guess." Kit's chest ached with a sharp pain, her heart stinging from his lack of affection. She refused to let him see how much it hurt and instead rolled her eyes in an attempt to hide her pain. "Alright, well, Mom says dinner's ready." No response. "What are you working on exactly?" Kit tried to nudge him into having an actual conversation with her. "Nothing. Close the door. I'll be down in a minute." Kit was careful as she navigated her way back through the maze of scattered belongings, reaching the door with a sigh. As she closed it behind her, she couldn't help but feel a tinge of disappointment. In the kitchen, the aroma of freshly cooked food filled the air as Kit's mother bustled around, preparing the table for dinner. As the last plate was set, Donald arrived home from work. He greeted his wife with a kiss and settled into a seat at the table, grateful for a home-cooked meal after a long day. Plates of baked chicken and bowls of steamed vegetables were being passed around when Donald noticed that a member of the family was not present. "Where's Dolius?" "I told Catherine to let her brother know that dinner would be ready." "I told him 30 minutes ago. I don't know what more you want me to do." "Watch it, Catherine. Priya, go get him, please. I expect him to be at the table ready to eat when I get home." "He knows that, Dad. That's not mine or Mom's fault." "Priya?" "Of course, dear. I apologize for not making sure he was at the table before you got home. It won't happen again." Priya smiled when she left and returned with Dolius. He sat at the table and proceeded to fill his plate with food. Donald's annoyance vanished. "What were you working on, Dolius?" he asked, his tone almost pleasant. "Soldering the sensors for that SIB I'm building. Working on the arms now." "Impressive. I never did get into robotics. Exemplar must be impressed with your progress. What department do they have you in now?" "I've been promoted to transportation coordinator," Dolius replied as he loaded up his plate. "In only 3 months? You'll be lead architect in less than a year at that rate." He let out a boisterous chuckle. Dolius, on the other hand, didn't seem appeased by their father's joke. "Very good, Dolius," Priya chimed in. Kit continued to eat, tired of the praising of her brother's achievements each night. "Priya, I'm thirsty." "Of course, Donald. I'll go get you more water." Priya stood up from the table and collected Donald's empty glass with only a lemon rose that sat wet at the bottom. A few minutes later, she returned with a new filled glass of water topped with a fresh-cut lemon rose. "Kit, I'm assuming you've been keeping up with your lessons?" Donald asked before taking a drink. "Yes, Dad." "Excellent. We can't afford to have the Tanners looking poorly in the eyes of Exemplar. That could mess things up for your brother." "I know, Dad. I'm keeping up with my lessons. You don't need to worry." "Good girl. Have any of the local boys caught your eye?" Kit coughed as her food caught in her throat. Her mother came to her aid, rubbing her back as Kit gulped down water to wash it down. "I'll take your reaction as a no," he continued, unbothered by his daughter's inability to breathe. She could see a smile spread across Dolius's face from the corner of her eye. "No, Dad," Kit managed to choke out. "That's a shame. You'll be 18 in a year, so it would be nice to have some prospect of what your future will look like. You should be ready to move on to other endeavors at that point." "Dolius will be 19 this year and he's still living here. Why would I need to leave when I'm 18? "Your brother is pursuing a secondary level of education. I assumed, per our last conversation, that you have no ambition to do anything once your primary education commences?" "It's not like that. I just don't know what I want to do." "Well, you're good at sewing. Perhaps you can do something with that." "I guess. It's not a passion or anything, but I can do it pretty well." "Make it your passion, because your future isn't looking too bright at the moment." Kit's hands clenched against her thigh, trying to resist the urge to talk back to her father. "Yes, Dad." Dolius chirped in before shoveling food into his mouth. "What's the point? Not like it matters." Donald froze, his fingers tightening around his fork. He shot Dolius a sharp, warning glare so intense it almost made Kit flinch. Kit glanced between them. "What's that supposed to mean?" she asked, looking at her brother. Dolius gave a shrug. "Nothing. Just saying." Donald cleared his throat. "It means your life's not some waiting game, Kit. You have choices. You just have to make one." She didn't respond, still trying to work out why her dad had reacted like that. A weird knot twisted in her stomach, but she didn't know why. "Now, help your mother clear the table." Kit helped Priya tidy up the table while Donald and Dolius watched TV together in the living room, before retiring to her bedroom. She changed into her pajamas and remembered the patch that she had taken earlier that morning from the newspaper stall was still in her jacket. As she lay in bed, she twirled the embroidered plum blossom flower between her fingers while trying to drift off to sleep. Kit knew tomorrow was a big day.